بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. So we have been reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Deliverance from Error, Al-Munqidh min Dalal, or the path to Sufism, freedom and fulfillment, some of the names. And we have reached a new topic, since really if we just simply briefly, let's remember Imam Ghazali began studying in Tus Khurasan. He joined Imam Harmi al-Juwayni ultimately, after being with a couple of other professors. He joined Imam al-Juwayni in Nishapur at the Nizamiyya until the death of the Imam, then to the Muaskar of Nizam al-Mulk, and then he was appointed as a professor at the Nizamiyya of Baghdad. There he wrote about philosophy, introduction to philosophy, Maqas Falasifa, a critique of philosophy, Tahafut al-Falasifa. He had this systematic doubt, a very unique experience. Then, of course, the spiritual struggle, and it's really about intention. And he realized that he needed to purify his heart. He gave up his position. Of course, the people would not have understood this. He was the professor par excellence in the Muslim world, and he distributed his wealth. He kept just a very little for his family and himself. And from there to Damascus, where he spent a couple of years in the minaret of the mosque, the Umayyad mosque, that is. And from there to the blessed city of Jerusalem in Palestine at Al-Aqsa Mosque, where the oral traditions places him in the two rooms above the gate of mercy, gate of repentance, Bab al-Rahmah, which is known in English really as the Golden Gate, and then to Hebron, Al-Khalil, then to Mecca and Medina, back to Baghdad. And this is really where what we are talking about. Now he is back in Baghdad, back in even he will be asked the title of this chapter, if you will, the reason for resuming teaching after having given it up. Doctors of Hearts. And I think probably this subtitle is really from the creative pen of the translator. There is inside the text, we will reach it inshallah shortly, where Imam Ghazali uses Arbab al-Qulub. For nearly 10 years, he said, I assiduously cultivated seclusion and solitude. During that time, several points became clear to me, of necessity for reasons I cannot enumerate. At one time by fruitional experience, though at another time by knowledge based on apodictic proof, and again by acceptance founded on faith. These points were that man is formed of a body and heart. And by the heart I mean the essence of man's spirit, which is the seat of the knowledge of God. Not the flesh, which man has in common with the corpse and beast. In the Arabic text, it says al-mayt wal-bahima, not al-mayyat. And I'm highlighting this deliberately because the students should understand that al-mayyit is the living human being who is going to die. Al-mayt, when he has already died. And this is something that people do not pay attention to. That his body may have a health which will result in his happiness, and the malady in which lies its ruin, that his heart likewise may have a health and soundness, and only he will be saved who comes to God with a sound heart. Here it's written really as a narrative, but the thankful the thanks to the translator, he put it in brackets and he gave reference to the verse, and really it's part ولا ينجو إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. Really the verse is يوم لا ينفع مال ولا بنون إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. And it may have a melody which will lead to his everlasting perdition in the next life. As God Most High has said, in their hearts is a melody. في قلوبهم مرض. That ignorance of God is the heart's deadly poison. Disobedience to God, it's incapacitating melody. Knowledge of God Most High is quickening antidote, and obedience to Him by resisting passion is healing remedy. That the only way to treat the heart by removing its malady and regaining its health lies in the use of remedies, just as that is the only way to treat the body. Remedies for the body effectively procure health because of a property in them which men endowed with intellect cannot perceive by virtue of their intellectual resources, but rather it must be the object of blind obedience to the physicians who learned it from the prophets, who, because of the special attribute of prophecy, came to know the special properties of things. In a similar fashion, it became necessarily evident to me that the reason for the effectiveness of the remedies of the acts of worship, with their prescriptions and determined quantities ordained by the prophets, cannot be perceived by means of the intellectual resources of men endowed with intellect. On the contrary, they must be the object of blind obedience to the prophets who perceived those qualities by the light of prophecy, not by intellectual resources. Yeah, there was uh, an ancient, I would say, to a certain extent, a medieval discussion, or maybe simply stating that the philosophers would say that the prophecy is acquired, like you strive, you work hard, and you reach that level. That's not true. Allah يصطفي من الملائكة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses from amongst the angels and from amongst the people, messengers. It's not acquired. It's not, you may acquire other things, but not prophecy. And it's not up to you. Even when you acquire, it's not up to you. وَلَا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء. They will not encompass any part of His knowledge, of Allah's knowledge, except that which He wills. Disobedience to God, its incapacitating malady. Knowledge of God Most High is the quickening antidote, and obedience to Him by resisting passion, its healing remedy. That the only way to treat the heart by removing its malady and regaining its health lies in the use of remedies, just as that is the only way to treat the body. Remedies for the body effectively procure health because of property in them which men endowed with intellect cannot perceive by virtue of their intellectual resources, but rather it must be the object of blind obedience to the physicians who learned it from the prophets, who, because of the special attribute of prophecy, of course, physician here, it's not really about medical sciences. This is about spirituality. And physician here is Someone who can cure your heart, not the organ. For that, you need a cardiologist. But in this case, we talk about spirituality. So, despite the use of these of this vocabulary, no, it's the whole thing about medicine. It's spirituality. It's knowledge of Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. It's obedience. So the physicians who learned it from the prophets, who because of the special attribute of prophecy, came to know the special properties of things. In a similar fashion, it became necessarily evident to me that the reason for the effectiveness of the remedies of the acts of worship with their prescriptions and determined quantities ordained by the prophets cannot be perceived by means of the intellectual resources of men endowed with intellect. On the contrary, they must be the object of blind obedience to the prophets who perceive those qualities by the light of prophecy, not by intellectual resources. Moreover, just as medicaments are composed of mixtures of elements differing in kind and quantity, some of them being double others in weight and quantity, and just as the difference of their quantities is not without a profound significance pertaining to the kind of the properties. So, likewise, the acts of worship, which are the remedies of the hearts, are composed of actions differing in kind and quantity, so that a prostration is the double of a bowing, and the morning prayer is half as long as the afternoon prayer. This difference is not without a profound significance, which pertains to the kind of the properties knowable only by the light of the prophecy. This is why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." Do pray the way you see me pray. That's the only thing you need to know. If you will have insight later on, inshallah, alhamdulillah, that's good. He continues by saying, very stupid and ignorant would be the man who would wish to discover in them a wisdom by means of reason, or who would suppose that they had been mentioned by chance, and not because of a profound divine significance in them, which requires them to be such, because of the special property in them. And just as in medicaments, there are basic elements, which are their chief ingredients, and additional substances, which are their complements, each of them having a special effect on the workings of their basic elements. So, likewise, supererogatory prayers and customary practices are complements for perfecting the effects of the principal elements of the acts of worship. In general, then, the prophets, peace be upon them, are the physicians for treating the maladies of hearts. By its activity, reason is useful simply to acquaint us with this fact, to bear witness to prophecy, by giving assent to its reality, to certify its own blindness, to perceiving what the eye of prophecy perceives, and to take us by our hands and turn us over to the prophets, as blind men are handed over to guides, and as troubled sick men are handed over to sympathetic physicians. To this point, reason can proceed and advance, but it is far removed from anything beyond that except for understanding what the physician prescribes. These, then, are the insights we gained with a necessity analogous to direct vision during the period of our solitude and seclusion. That was A. Now, the slackness of faith, a subtitle uh, by the translator, which is excellent really to divide the to break the narrative. Imam Ghazali continues by saying, Then we saw the lukewarmness of men's beliefs in the basis of prophecy and consequently in the reality of prophecy and in action in accord with the data of prophecy. We also ascertained that this was widespread among men. I then reflected on the reasons for men's lukewarmness and the weakness of their faith, and found them to be four in number. Number one, a reason stemming from those engrossed in the science of philosophy. Number two, a reason stemming from those absorbed in the way of Sufism. Number three, a reason stemming from those attached to the claim of authoritative teaching, Talimites, the Batinites, the esoterics. Number four, a reason stemming from the behavior of those popularly regarded as preeminent in learning. For a period of time, I next addressed myself successfully to individuals, questioning those who were remiss in fulfilling the law. I would ask a man about his conspicuous reason for that and inquire into his belief and his inner convictions, asking him, Why are you so remiss? If you believe in the afterlife, but do not prepare yourself for it and barter it for this life, bartering, you exchange one thing for the other without the presence of, uh, money per se. Why this is stupidity? You would not ordinarily barter two things for one. How then can you barter what is unending, talk about infinity, for a limited number of days? In fact, if you divide one's life on earth, in fact, if you combine the life of all people, cumulative, from Adam alayhi salam until the very last person on earth, and you divide it by infinity, that's practically zero. How then can you barter what is unending, infinite, for a limited number of days? And if you do not believe, then you are an infidel. So act wisely in the quest for faith and look into the cause of your hidden unbelief. For this is your real inner conviction and the cause of your outward boldness, even though you do not openly express it, because you want to bedeck yourself with the trappings of faith and to be respected for paying lip service to the law. One man would reply, if this were a matter one was bound to observe, then the learned would be those most properly bound to it. But of those most renowned among the learned, so and so does not perform the prescribed prayer, and such a one drinks wine, and another devours the assets of religious endowments, haram, unlawful money, and the property of orphans, and another feathers his nest with the lavish largesse of the Sultan without being wary of what is illicit, and another accepts bribes for judgment and testimony, and so on in many similar instances. It's a beautiful translation, but maybe we can say something about feathering the nest. And another feathers his nest with the lavish largesse of the Sultan without being wary of what is illicit. That's a beautiful translation, of course, not word per word. The Arabic, وفلان يأكل إدرار السلطان ولا يحترز عن الحرام. فلان يأكل إدرار السلطان. He basically subsists because he really يأكل eats, but it's not really the necessarily the actual eating. It's really living off the either handouts or gifts or a salary or whatever, without really the paying attention, not really caring about that which is illicit, that which is haram really. ولا يحترز عن الحرام. A second man would claim to be an adept in the science of Sufism and allege that he had attained a degree beyond the need for formal worship. And a third would offer as his excuse one of the specious reasons advanced by the licentious. These are the erring who profess the way of Sufism. A fourth respondent would have had contact with the Talimites, the Batinites, the esoterics. So he would declare the truth is doubtful, the way to it is hard, there is much disagreement about it, and no one view is preferable to any other. Moreover, rational proofs contradict one another so that no reliance can be placed on the opinion of independent thinkers. But the advocate of authoritative teaching makes categorical pronouncements without needing any proof. How then can we give up the certain because of the uncertain? A fifth man would say, I do not do this out of servile conformism, taqlid, أعمى, but I have studied the science of philosophy and I have grasped the real meaning of prophecy. I know that it comes down to what is wise and beneficial, and that the aim of its religious prescriptions is to control the common people and to curb them from internecine strife and contention and from unrestrained indulgence in their passions. Hence, I am not one of the ignorant masses and therefore subject to commandment. Rather, I am one of the wise, following the way of wisdom and well versed in it. And in my wisdom, I can get along without servile conformism. This is the limit reached by the faith of those who have studied the philosophy of the theistic philosophers. The Imam Ghazali named them Ilahiyun, those who subscribe to metaphysics that is known from the books of Ibn Sina and Abu Nasr al-Farabi. These are the men who bedeck themselves with the trappings of Islam. Often you may see one of them reciting the Quran, attending the assemblies and public prayers, and paying great lip service to the Sharia. But despite that, he does not give up his wine bibbing. But despite that, he does not give up his wine bibbing and various kinds of depravity and debauchery. If he is asked if prophecy is not authentic, why do you pray? He may reply, it is an uh, asceticism of the body and the custom of the local people and a way to preserve fortune and family. And he may say the Sharia is authentic and prophecy is genuine. Then one should say, why then do you drink wine? And he may say, was prohibited simply because it causes enmity and hatred. But I, by my wisdom, can guard against that. My only aim is drinking, or in drinking, is to stimulate my mind, to sharpen, really, yashhad. This reminds me of the of those pretty much of those who the logic is you get drunk, you might drive your car, you are intoxicated, and you might kill yourself or kill others or both. There are many things, many accidents that could be caused by drunkenness. And he would say, "No, I am a social drinker. Like I'm in control of how much I drink. A social drinker. Social drinker. The assumption is that he does not get intoxicated because he limits his intake, forgetting that the social drinkers of today are the alcoholics of tomorrow. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, called it the mother uh, of all evil, of all bad things, of all negative things. Indeed, Ibn Sina went so far as to write in a statement, in a testament of his, that he made a pact with God to do certain things, and that he would extol the ordinances of the law, and would not be remiss in performing the religious acts of worship, nor would he drink for pleasure, but only for medicinal purposes and to promote his health. So the furthest he got respecting purity of faith and the obligation of acts of worship was to make an exception for wine bibbing on the score of promoting his health. Such is the faith of those philosophers who pretend to have faith. I'm not sure. It's been many, many years since I have read the following. It was said that ultimately Ibn Sina suffered from hemorrhoids because of drinking wine, but really, Allahu Alam. First of all, if this statement is correct, and Allahu Alam, if wine does cause such trouble, and maybe other abdominal things, but it's been a long, long time, and I cannot even myself uh, immediately now verify the information. Such is the faith of those philosophers who pretend to have faith. Many indeed have been deceived by them, and their deception has been intensified by the weak arguments of those who oppose the philosophers. For their opposition was to repudiate the sciences of geometry and logic, and others which, for the philosophers, are true of necessity, according to the reasoned explanation we have set forth previously. Then there is so we said A, B, and we still have C and D, and so we are practically halfway, and I think it's enough for today, and inshallah we'll continue with number C, my return to teaching. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.